that, but I would love to know to start, like, what are you working on right now that's exciting to you in your work as a scholar?
Yeah, two things really excite me right now. One is we have purchased some new instrumentation, which allows us to make measurements of both the concentrations and also ages of minerals that we really haven't been able to do in the past. And so our research is really cyclic. We've developed new instrumentation, and then we use that instrumentation to solve problems that we were unable to solve before. So we're right now in the phase of developing instrumentation that can make measurements of minerals that allow us to understand the when and the where and the how of really large mountain belts and how they work. And so in particular, I'm really excited, and I have been for the last 20 or so years, about working in the Himalaya, but also the Canadian Rockies and places in Alaska, and as well as places like New Zealand as well, and also some work in Antarctica. So taking those instruments and really applying them to understand how really large mountain belts work and what drives them to be as high as they are and last as long as they do.
Well, I found you because of all the press that you get, and I see pictures of you all over the world, and I was thinking about remote and distributed work. So my first question in that realm is, what was it like for you to watch everyone kind of live your life and make that transition and get onto these things like Zoom, like we're using now? What was that like? And then, of course, I'll ask questions specifically about how you use some of the technologies and so forth.
Yeah, I think it was a really interesting period for everyone, but especially since our group has been really distributed and worked remotely for decades, really, to watch people try to figure out that technology and I think stumble over the same things that we've tried to have to deal with as well. And in particular, working through time zones, working through different internet connections, all of those things, trying to find a range of tools that can actually do what you want to do. There's no really one single piece of technology or infrastructure that really solves all of the issues that we find. And so the key for us was really always to find that set of tools that helps you achieve what you want to achieve. And seeing people struggle with all of those things is kind of brought back memories of the ways we'd tried and solve those problems in the past. And also some we simply couldn't solve. And then once those problems become widespread, then we definitely saw a bunch of solutions come along that have also would take out.
Yeah, I imagine with the herd all going to use stuff like Zoom, suddenly features appeared, and you're like, "Oh,
Right.
finally!" That's great. Well, you're welcome as as a person who joined in the fray. So I'm very interested in any of specific tools you use that others of us might benefit from, and I'm really interested in things about like your work culture and stuff. Like if I was on one of your teams, how do I feel in the loop? And so any of those kinds of things that you've developed that it might be less technical, but more in the leadership realm.
Yeah, and for me, really the crucial thing is onboarding my team members in a way that they understand both my expectations, but also what they can expect from me. So that really there is clear communication about what kinds of tasks they might be involved in, but also what kind of resources they have available to them, so that if they can't get hold of me or someone else, that they have a set of resources and a set of tools that they can use that might help them solve maybe not all of those issues, but many of them. And so that kind of onboarding document is a living document in our group, and every group member will add to it with new ideas, new tools, new ways of doing things. But really that's kind of our Bible that we live by, is what does this document allow me to do in the absence of a face-to-face meeting. And so we kind of expand that document to tailor it to individual people within the group, but we also have kind of a common set of ground rules and ground expectations that we use extensively. So to me, that's really the biggest thing, is setting those expectations from the very beginning about what's possible, what's expected. And I think that probably sets a lot of people at ease with respect to what they feel like they need to be achieving in their role.
Right. Does this seem like is it a Google Doc, or is it, do you use like a wiki platform, or what are these, what do your instruction manuals look like?
Yeah, it's a series of Google documents that have links to wikis for individual things. So it's kind of a Google document that's overarching, and then there'll be a series of wikis under that for specific, for example, fieldwork protocols, for lab protocols, for all of these things that we use on a regular basis. And so that kind of group hive mind style editorial system works extremely well, because it's really hard to keep updating them. But if you update it as you go, then we found it to be a really useful way of doing this.
Are these things hundreds of pages, thousands of pages? What do they look like?
If you were to drill down into the individual details of the individual laboratory instruments and how you might run them on an hourly basis, I think it might be a couple of 100 pages total. But
Right.
on a weekly basis, I would say most of the group members might see less than 5 pages of documentation that they could scroll through and find out most of what they're trying to achieve, or get guidance if they can't get hold of it with us.
Do you have any tips on making people feel like this is my team, even though we're all over the place?
That's right. Yeah. And for me, the biggest thing is when we are together, we make the most of that time. So might not be together very often or for very long, but when everyone's in town or most people are in town, we definitely get together, and either be it socially or related to some people's work or whatever they've found when they come back from field work or analytical work elsewhere. We'd also make sure that those people get a chance to share what they've done or share the problems that they've had. And so making those connections when you can is, I think, really crucial. And then at the same time, once they're away, also sending them away with a series of clear instructions and clear documentation about what should I do in this situation, or who could I contact, or what might be the general expectations for how they might be able to communicate with people. And I think that's particularly true when I have people who are going away for months at a time, and they might not see their family for months at a time. I might not be able to contact them that easily. Knowing in advance what it's going to be like and sitting on a clear plan is really crucial. So we try to do a lot of planning in advance, and that generally makes things go a lot smoother rather than just throwing people into the deep end and they realize when they're in Antarctica that they're not actually going to be able to talk to their family every day. They might have to wait a week or so. And so that advanced planning is really key for us.
It sort of minimizes the surprises. If someone goes adrift, and you feel like a lot of people worry about managing people who are working from home, for example, that like, I can't watch their work. Do you solve that through just picking the right team members, or do you have any tips for trying to, if you start to feel like somebody's going off of your research path or something, how do you manage that?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot about really building that trust from day one. So especially when I have graduate students, treating them like a junior colleague who you give a certain amount of trust and a lot of respect to what they know, but also giving them guidance at the right time. And so I try to make a point of checking in with them on a routine basis, and maybe see where things are going well, see where things are not going well. But it might only be a month or 6 weeks. We have just a really short conversation, and really making sure those conversations are targeted around what they want to discuss as much as what I'd like to find out what they've been working on. But seeing those expectations from the beginning to me is really key. And I realized actually a long time ago that a bit of trust goes a really long way. That I don't actually need to be watching out what most of my researchers are doing. 99% of the time they're going to do what you ask them, and they'll do much more than you ask. And so a little bit of mutual trust there and respect goes a long way.
Nice. Kate, what's on your short list for stuff that's essential for your distributed work?
And so for me, it really depends on the situation. If someone's in Antarctica, then, for example, the satellite phone is really the only thing that's going to be useful. And so I would pin it into different levels of remoteness. But any kind of internet connection, then we typically use some kind of messaging application. And that also roughly depends on what continent you're on. But a lot of my students especially are unwilling or not unwilling, but very reluctant to send an email for a really short question. And it might be something that's bugging them, but they don't want to send an email because it doesn't seem that important. So for me, some form of instant messaging application is really crucial. So be it WhatsApp or Google Chat or some kind of, I don't particularly like Slack for a number of reasons in a group that we have, but something like that where you can bounce ideas back and forth. But then also at some point, feeling that if you want to say this issue is getting too big or that instant messaging, actually send an email, outline the issue, and we'll have a record of it and we can try and do something about it. But that kind of semi-instant communication is super crucial for small things that might otherwise snowball.
Right.
For me, the other thing is some kind of planning, time planning software that allows us to basically have a Gantt chart for the lab where you can see what everyone is working on, but they can also see how what they're working on might also integrate over the whole group. And to me, that's really useful because then people start saying, oh, someone else is in the lab next week. I can go and chat to them about what I'm doing the following week, and you can bounce ideas off each other. So to me, it's kind of a time and a space thing that charting software really helps a lot in that process. and then that kind of instant communication tools. Those are really, for me, the two big ones. Everything else, Zoom, I mean, I think it's great, but for me, knowing what other people are doing without having to talk to them all the time is
Right.
So those are my two tops. Two top ones.
So your whole career has been going to very remote locations and doing research. If the university just said, hey, you know, we've got grants for you and you could just stay in Goleta, closer to your family and so forth, would you trade that, or have you just become used to being, you know, yourself being going out on adventures and then coming back to your lab here?
Yeah, for me, being outside campus is such a big component of what I do as a professional that I don't think I could stay on campus permanently and just work from campus. But I think setting those expectations for how often you might be on or off campus and what your task is while you're on or off campus and how you might break your work balance, I think is really critical. I think once people realize what they can and can't do in certain environments, you can easily mix and match those, and I think still be really productive. At least that's my group that we've seen.
I'm guessing there's at least a couple members of your team who are just processing, you know, living with these university systems and getting all your stuff in order. And if, you know, they can only just imagine what it's like to be you way out there. So do you have some kind of anchors, administrative folks here?
Yeah, we do. The Earth Science Department administrative staff are fantastic, and Earth Research Institute likewise. And one thing I think maybe that some people tend to miss is it's really useful if you tell those people what you're doing. You know, you might expect a random phone call from someone in India,
right,
trying to figure out how to get some rocks shipped back to the United States. And so even a small amount of context for those really critical administrative staff is really key. So I always try and give them as much context as I can for what we're trying to do. We're trying to do certain things, and I think that really helps. Is they're part of the team, and so they should have some of that context and some of that kind of understanding of why we're doing certain things as well. That really helps.
Yeah, it's fun.
I think for me, the main realization I've come to is that many of my students, particularly, but also researchers, do need some time to be remote, and I think it's a big part of who they are to be out in the world doing your own thing or being off campus. I think we are, you know, some people I think are really centered on campus being where everything happens, but if you look at the research activities going on, much of what UCSB does is linked to the community or to the broader environment, and it happens intrinsically off campus. And so I guess I've always thought of the campus itself as a hub, but it has satellite locations that are, in my mind, equally important to how the system operates. So I think, you know, not having a fear that if you're not on campus, you're not being productive is something I hear often. And to me, it's, I think, you know, realizing those satellite locations are as important to our mission as the main campus is.
Right.
It's great to talk to you. It's something I've thought a lot about, so I'm happy to share any insight.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much. And all right, I'm going to stop.